Hello everyone, welcome to Philobytes. In today's video, we are going to talk about existentialism and compare it with essentialism. I'm going to refer to some key points as I believe was discussed by Jean-Paul Sartre. During the process, I'm also going to discuss some features that we find in Indian philosophy, some real problems as far as existential crisis is involved, and we are going to have glimpses of certain mythological anecdotes which tell us what is more important, whether existence or essence. Simply put, the question is, are we free or are we fated? Now, is there an essence to our existence, or do we merely exist? This problem is an allusion to the perennial debate among philosophers about free will and determinism, with strong arguments both for and against the positions. Indian philosophy abounds in this discussion. The airtight law of karma definitely appears to make us very determined. The deterministic worldview is also the worldview of physical science, especially the Newtonian classical physics, till the situation became highly ambiguous with the entry of quantum mechanics. So let's explore essentialism versus existentialism debate over here. Do you believe every being has an inherent and fixed purpose, or that we each have the freedom or responsibility to determine our own fate? Here I shall discuss two crucial contentions of Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialism. I'm not an expert on the thoughts of the great writer. With my very limited understanding, I still felt uncomfortable regarding 2 points that Sartre seems to have made. This is the reason I made this video as a way of self-expression, and I'm sure my viewers would correct my mistakes wherever necessary. To begin with, first, I cannot accept that we are condemned to be free. Rather, it is a blessing I want to uphold. Sartre believed that human beings live in constant anguish, not solely because life is miserable, but because we are condemned to be free. Secondly, Sartre emphasized the temporal precedence of existence over essence. I prefer to believe that existence and essence are simultaneous, like the two sides of the same coin. As Sartre said, if existence really does precede essence, there is no explaining things away by reference to a fixed and given human nature. In other words, there is no determinism. Man is free, man is freedom. On the other hand, if God does not exist, we find no values or commands to turn to which legitimize our conduct. So, in the bright realm of values, we have no excuses behind us, no justification before us. We are alone with no excuses. This is the idea I shall try to convey when I say that man is condemned to be free. Condemned because he did not create himself, yet in other respects is free. Because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. So let's get into the first problem, which holds that existence is prior to essence. Existentialism is a philosophical idea that each person is in charge of giving their own life meaning or purpose. Gods, governments, professors, or other authorities do not provide us with our personal purpose or meaning. Sartre's theory of existentialism states that existence precedes essence, and that is only by existing and acting existing a certain way do we give meaning to our lives. According to him, there is no fixed design for how a human being should be and no God to give us a purpose. Our lives, according to the existentialist perspective, have no predetermined purpose. We simply exist. The advantage of this viewpoint is that we have complete control over not only our destiny, but also our personalities, values, and worldview. So nothing is set in store for us. Knowing there are no rules can be freeing for some people, but believing that they are ultimately responsible for making their own lives meaningful can be anxiety-inducing for others. Essentialism, on the other hand, offers the comfort of believing in a plan, an order of things, but it may also lead to people boxing themselves in and ignoring the human ability for fluidity. This is known as mauvaise foi, poor faith or bad faith, that is, failure to exercise integrity and autonomy in one's basic life choices. Sartre used the example of a waiter who is so certain that he was meant to be a waiter that he refuses to explore his potential in other fields. In Sartre's own words, as far as men go, it is not what they are that interests me, but what they can become. People are like dice. We throw ourselves in the direction of our own choosing. While describing his existential position, Sartre observes that the first effect of existentialism is that it puts every man in possession of himself as he is. It places the entire responsibility for his existence squarely upon his own shoulders. Choices and responsibilities. According to Sartre, man makes himself through his choices. So when we make a choice between alternatives, we are affirming that what we have chosen is valuable as we cannot choose the worse. What we choose is always the better, and nothing can be better for us unless it is better for all. This implies the aspect of responsibility that is attached to the choices we make in our lives. Since the choices we make are our own choices, and since we always make the better among the alternatives, we are responsible for them and also responsible for what happens to others and us as a result of making those choices. We are responsible not only for our own individuality but also for all men, as when we choose for everyone. Now, after that briefest possible highlight on existentialism, let's talk about essentialism. Can we say that our essences are encoded in our DNA? According to the essentialist worldview, we all possess an inherent quality or essence that existed before our birth and affects how we will turn out. It may appear at first that essentialism only applies in the context of religion and spirituality. But that is not so because the term essentialist can also refer to a person with a scientific outlook who thinks that our future is largely determined by the DNA our parents handed down to us. Hence, an essentialist is a scientifically inclined person who believes that our parents' DNA plays a substantial influence in deciding our future. You can see in this flowchart how genetic information is passed down from generation to generation. Information is coded in the DNA, and to access this information, the DNA sequence is copied or transcribed by enzymes known as RNA polymerases. The resulting messenger RNA carry the genetic information to the protein synthesizing machinery, where it is used to define the amino acid sequence and therefore the structure and function of proteins. Now, how does existentialism and essentialism correspond to psychology and psychological theories? Depending on whether I'm an existentialist or an essentialist, there can be two types of psychological therapies. The idea that some components of essentialism or some aspect of our existence are at least partially predetermined has been supported by some psychological theories. Neuropsychology, genetics, and evolution offer psychology a broad foundation for understanding mental disorders using biological or medical approaches. The best example for this, of course, is the Freudian understanding of our minds. On the other hand, a holistic picture of an individual being more valuable moves us away from essentialist views towards a more integrated approach. There is an approach to therapy called existential therapy, which emphasizes client responsibility and freedom. This is in contrast to Freudian psychoanalysis, which posits that the root of the client's problems lies in their unconscious mind rather than their conscious decision making. This existential therapy allows patients to honestly, freely, and thoroughly investigate their lived experiences, and that is the overall goal of existential therapy. Clients are helped to understand their experiences and any subjective interpretation they may have through this spontaneous collaborative process of discovery. The existential approach refers to a therapist's stance that emphasizes the client's development of self-awareness and decision-making skills. The humanistic psychology subfield that places a strong emphasis on the power of free will is included in this existential approach. Humanistic and existential perspectives share the conviction that individuals possess the potential for self-awareness and free will, and this is according to the website of the NCBI in the United States. Humanistic perspectives also frequently hold that people are fundamentally good and have a strong desire to realize their full potential or to reach self-actualization. It is argued by the existentialist that it was the DNA that existed first and thus it preceded the essence. But my perspective is that the existent DNA was already essenced by way of coded information. This is what we understood from the flow chart. Therefore, it is really impossible to segregate the two based on temporality. The process of separating existence and essence and placing them in order of importance seems to be easier said than done. The issue at hand can be understood as an integrated essence-existence mode, just as the mind and body are now viewed as the mind-body unit. This point is crucial, and this is my personal conviction as far as our topic of discussion goes, that is, which is prior, existence or essence. Now let's find out what Indian philosophy says about the existence essence problem. The Indian perspective of Advaitavada. According to Advaitavada, ultimate absolute reality is Brahman, and Brahman is described as Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. The Vedanta also proclaims Jiva Brahmaiva Napara, which means that the individuals and the ultimate absolute self, that is Brahman, are actually the same. Thus we can say, I am existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. As Adi Shankara said, thus one should know oneself to be of the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchit Ananda. I am pure existence, that is, I am Sat. My mind and body, and indeed everything I see around myself, is essentially nothing but pure existence appearing in multifarious forms. Ignorance or Maya makes me unaware of my Sat nature, my pure existence, and consequently, being identified with the body-mind complex with all its attendant problems and sufferings, I become lost and imagine myself as extinguished by death. But do we really die? No, according to Advaita Vedanta, I am pure existence that is eternally existing. I am pure consciousness that is Chit. Science says that consciousness is a product of the body, the brain to be specific. But the Upanishads hold that Chit or consciousness is not a product of the body or even the mind. Our bodies are made of matter and our minds are made of matter as well, albeit a different kind of matter. But Chit is radically different from matter, so it is wrong to use the word mind for it. It can only be translated as consciousness. Chit pervades and illumines the mind-body, enabling all its functions, thinking, seeing, hearing, feeling, speaking, and so on. Chit or consciousness is known only through its manifestations in the various functions of the mind, organs, and body. Chit is the matrix of the three states of consciousness that we are aware of, which are waking, dreaming, and sleeping states. The fourth consciousness is the pure consciousness, the Turiya state, which is eternally present. Ananda. This is the third aspect of Brahman. I am pure bliss. And what is this bliss or happiness? More importantly, how can we be truly happy? The search for happiness forms the field of inquiry in a remarkable section of the Taittiriya Upanishad. What exactly is studied about happiness? The answer is happiness born of sense contacts between subject and object, as is usually understood, is ephemeral. This is not the sort of happiness that is denoted as Ananda in the description of Brahman or the Jiva. The Ananda or bliss is the very essence of the soul, its very nature, and one may experience it when he exists in his Anandamaya Kosha or the sheath of bliss. So here again we find that essence of Ananda is encoded in the domain of a particular type of existence, that is existence in the sheath of bliss. My essence will vary depending on the realm of my existence. Annamaya Kosha or the Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Jnanamaya Kosha or the Anandamaya Kosha. These are the 5 domains of existence that man can be in, which are accepted in Hinduism. So therefore, I can say I am Sat, Chit and Ananda, that is Satchidananda. Existence, consciousness and bliss are not qualities or properties of Brahman or even the individual Atman. It is not that the Brahman exists, but that it is existence itself. Not that the Brahman is a conscious entity. Rather, it is consciousness itself. And not that Brahman is happy, it is bliss itself. So that's my existence and essence all rolled into one, according to Advaita Vedanta. The Vedanta undoubtedly proclaims that existence and essence cannot be separated. So now we come to the second problem. Are we condemned to be free? To understand this, let's find out what happens during an existential crisis. In psychology and psychotherapy, existential crises are internal conflicts characterized by the impression that life lacks meaning. Some authors also highlight confusion about personal identity in their definitions. Existential crises are accompanied by anxiety and stress, often to such a degree that they disrupt the normal functioning of daily living and lead to depression. Their negative attitudes towards life and meaning reflect the different positions characteristic of the philosophical movement known as existentialism. Synonyms and closely related terms include existential fear, non-existence, existential neurosis, and alienation. Various aspects related to existential crisis are sometimes divided into emotional, cognitive, and behavioral components. Emotional components refer to feelings they cause, such as emotional pain, despair, helplessness, guilt, anxiety, and loneliness. Cognitive components include loss of personal worth and reflection of on one's own death. So, what do we do during such a crisis? We choose as free agents, but the question is, are we consequently condemned? I want to share with you glimpses of such crises recently faced. Instead of theorizing, let's delve into real concrete examples of how people behaved, what free choices they made during such crises as the corona epidemic and the Russian-Ukraine war. I shall then discuss the crisis as faced and described in the Hindu epic Mahabharata, followed by some mythological anecdotes which represent our topic in a very interesting manner. We have seen the pandemic made domestic abuse horribly worse. Okay, and the pandemic, it has been described as a pandemic within a pandemic, where intimate partner violence during COVID-19 increased exponentially. Now, did we know how intolerable our own family members will seem to us once we are all locked up together within the four walls? Why did we choose to behave like that? We don't know. My point is, our existence and essence are intertwined, inseparable. And it is only during a crisis the real me flows out spontaneously. So during the pandemic and lockdown, anxiety, depression made people lash out their frustrations at their kith and kin. Fortunately, counter-examples were seen too, where people underscored the pain of others over their own. I just want you to think why this difference in free choice. Is it some way connected to essence? And can we say then that essence is intimately linked with existence? That is my question to all of you. So here is a very heartwarming example of Ruby Kumari, who in a situation like the corona pandemic, without fearing the consequences, came forward to extend her support to two high-risk pregnant mothers. She is a CRY project staff in Uttar Pradesh and who is a trained nurse and works in areas with high instances of infant, child, and neonatal mortality. Yet another reaction to the lockdown situation is this problematic consumption of online pornography during the COVID-19 pandemic. My question is simple. Why did different people choose to behave so differently in the same crisis situation? Why did COVID warriors choose to think of others over his or her own self? Why did the meritorious student choose to get addicted to adult films during his online classes, changing pandemic to pandemic? Sure, it's a free will, says the existentialist. But doesn't a deeper analysis of the free will action also brings to light the agent's essence? They behaved in accordance with their essence, I would like to believe. And what happened during the Russia-Ukraine war? Ukraine female troops were formed, where women left their homes and took up arms. Beautiful girls will take on Russian soldiers, said the Hindustan News Hub. Did we know that simple loving mothers and young girls would have the courage to undergo military training and stand up against the mighty Russian soldiers? The point is, did they themselves know they had this essence? Here is another example of an exemplary free choice made by the Indian doctor, Dr. Prithviraj Ghosh in Ukraine. When all were fleeing from Ukraine and trying to save the lives of their own and near and dear ones, what did this man do? He said, I won't leave until all students evacuated. Surely an existential crisis is of prime importance. But prodigal figures like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela were the personifications of what? Existential crisis or essential assurance? The despondency of Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verse 34, the blessed Lord said, all the great warriors, Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, are already destroyed. Simply fight and you will vanquish your enemies. So, isn't it complete determinism? Where is the question of free will here? But that would be a grossly wrong interpretation, for the path of the Bhagavad Gita is not the path of compulsion. It is rather a path of free will. We have the free will over our actions. Karma neva dhikaraste. Chapter 2, verse 47. It is a path of self-realization where the honest and considered opinion of the individual is highly valued. No dogma is thrust upon the throat of the gullible. In chapter 5, verse 15, the blessed Lord said, the omnipresent God does not involve himself in the sinful or virtuous deeds of anyone. An existential crisis is a time when our essences are revealed. What a person does and how he handles his crisis is his essence. From this perspective, crises are blessings in disguise in our lives. It is not by a cursory chance that the first adhyaya of the Gita is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. It is during the times of extreme despondency and helplessness that we turn with outstretched hands towards light for guidance. Here Krishna may be interpreted to mean one's higher self, the discriminative faculty toward which we turn for support. And yoga in the Gita is used in the sense of yujir, which means conjunction. A conjunction takes place between the dejected soul and his higher levels of consciousness. So we can rephrase this sentence as to mean a conjunction, yoga, takes place between the dejected soul who is facing an existential crisis and his higher levels of consciousness, that is, his essence. So a conjunction takes place between the existence and essence. We become interiorized and reflective during the crisis. At least there is a chance that one may do so under the circumstances. Such being the situation, I reiterate that this freedom to choose cannot be a curse, but a scope for expansion. It is an opportunity. It helps us rise above, progress, and evolve. It is the exam time of life. How can I know which chapters I need to improve upon if I do not take the exam? It is self-assessment and definitely a privilege. It is not a condemnation, though prima facie it may appear to be so. Now, existence and essence in mythology and folklore. The beauty of existential crisis and the sublime essence it can lead one to can also be expressed in terms of two legendary metaphors. Firstly, the thorn birds. There is an old Celtic legend about a bird which sings only once in its life. It sings that single song more sweetly than any other creature on the face of this earth. From the moment it leaves its nest, the bird searches for a thorn tree and does not rest until it has found one. Having found the thorn tree, the bird sings among the tree's savage branches and impales itself on the longest, sharpest spine. Then, dying, it rises above its own agony to out-carol the lark and the nightingale. The whole world stills to listen, and God in his heaven smiles. The best is accomplished at the cost of the greatest pain, so says the legend. Secondly, we all know the story of the phoenix. This mythical bird is a symbol of hope, renewal, rebirth, immortality, resurrection, solitude, and grace. Just like the phoenix emerges from its ashes, so can man after devastation and loss. The phoenix gives mankind hope and urges us to fight on. It asks us to keep up the human spirit. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is a timeless testimony along the same path of the eternal essence of love, compassion, and forgiveness at the cost of existence. So here is my conclusion. Crisis wrings out the essence from us. Yes, it's a choice. There is freedom too. But what I will naturally manifest as my essence again depends on my state of existence. I can choose my animal nature or I can choose to be an evolved person. I can choose to kill or I can choose to sacrifice myself for the benefit of humanity. It's a choice I make on the battlefield, not in my comfort zone. I choose my essence from my level of existence. They're embedded into one another. We cannot prioritize one over the other, nor temporally nor qualitatively. Also, my freedom to choose is an opportunity to better myself and not a sort of punishment. I hope to express my views on existentialism vis-a-vis essentialism in this video. It is not my presumptuous claim that have solved this debate for good. I've shared my perspectives and have tried to exemplify my position variously. I would love to know how the viewers would react to this dilemma, and I'm especially interested in my critics. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the videos, please subscribe to Philobites. See you soon. Bye bye.